it's something that I'm still growing in, is being able to make that connection in a way that is meaningful too, and inspirational, but also authentic. Because it's like you're kind of growing with it, and that's not really a question. That's just what it's like for me in the first week.
Can I say what I think you're experiencing?
Yeah.
I think what you're experiencing is people, like we were talking about attachment, and like attachment to how you know somebody, attachment to the past, attachment to whatever. Sorry, my alarms keep going off.
Well, are those alarms?
It's my Google alarm. It's telling me to get to work.
Get to work. Speaking of.
I think what you're experiencing is people's attachment to how they know you as a salesperson, as someone who's very seasoned and is very, very, very good at a sales cycle, and people's attachment to knowing you that way and refusing to learn you in a new way of, hey, I'm just a guy and I'm actually super authentic and I'm a great dad and I have a healthy life and I actually have really transformed over the last decade and I'd love for you to get to know me this way. And I think what you experience and that experience of like self-doubt is the experience of others' attachment to knowing you that way. And why, as people, and why this is great, because why it's really important to know that we all have it is because someone else's attachment to knowing you a certain way impacts how they react, how they respond, how they hear. There's like the already always listening of how you're landing. And I think as people, when we're trying to step into something new, if somebody's really attached to knowing us a certain way, how we may experience that is doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Is my heart in the right place? And I'm gonna be bold and say, yeah, it probably is. And if you're really that way and you keep showing up that way consistently, because that is really where your heart is and that is what you're creating in your life now, that people will slowly detach from that knowing of you.
Okay.
And that doubt will slowly turn into like, screw that. This is who I am. Like, I am this way. But at the beginning, when you're trying something new, how people treat you is really tempting to feel as doubt.
This is why you get into relationship, because you reflect your experience of me, which seems even more accurate than the way I can describe myself. Because I'm up to describing myself how I think people see me or how I want people to see me versus I think you just say it how you see me from the outside. Like I don't have your view. And it's worthwhile. And I think, thank you for that. That's actually exactly what it is. And then because of that, then you are going through a process of showing up differently. Because it's like, being very attached to, I want to be seen as like the successful, like corporate guy.
And it goes small too. I mean, like when I had my hair blue for like 5 years. And when I first did it, oh my gosh, it's amazing the things people will say when you're trying to show up in a different way. Simple as a hair color. But for that first month though, and it happened to be around Halloween, which made it even more weird. Because people would ask, oh, you must be doing that for a Halloween costume. What are you dressing up as? I got that. Oof. Oh, what did you dress up for Halloween? Oh, it was also football season. Oh my gosh, you must be so into the Seahawks. When did you do that? Are you doing that for football season?
Because why would anyone else
anyone else dye all of their hair blue? So I would get these comments like that. And it was like, and then it was like this doubt of like, do I really want my hair blue? Like, what is going on? But I knew that I liked it. And I knew that it was like just the way I wanted to be expressed in that moment of time. But at the beginning, it was like a lot of doubt. And then it was like, screw that. I'm owning this blue hair. And 5 years, like I had it for 5 years. And slowly those wore off. And then guess what it turned into? Because I was owning it, the story of, did you do that for Halloween? Or whatever, the Seahawks season turned into, oh my gosh, you look so great with blue hair. I have no idea how anyone can pull that off.
Yeah.
Right? But the same thing happens for any type of change you want to make in your life. If it's how you want to show up, if it's, I want to be known as like a kinder person, because people have only known me as being really strict, maybe a tight ass, because I used to be stressed all the time, and I'm not stressed all the time now, but people still treat me as though I am. So it's really hard for me to show up in a new way. It's like, you just like stick to your guns. But the trick though is you have to be in community with people who support you and who see you and who want you to be expressed as you want to be expressed.
Well, that's a good topic. That's a good topic for tomorrow, because we're out of time, is how we live our life inside of a story, and kind of what we're up to. And I think this is the kind of conversation that we invite y'all to. Like there's a segment in our workshop that is very powerful for a lot of folks, is when they realize the story that they're in. That is to say, like the language that they're up to, enrolling other people and making sure they're on the same page. Because I mean that's how countries are formed, inside of language and agreement. And we do that inside of our own relationship. We do that when we walk out the house, is we're stating how you want to be seen. And what you're up to is making sure people are all aligned with how you see yourself. And where the conflict occurs is when there's that discrepancy of how you're seen. And just like what I was sharing, what you were sharing is like, there's that conflict of like, I'm not a Halloween costume. I'm not a Seahawks. I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan, but and
it'll deposit doubt until you're like, no.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like, it's like, oh, you're just, you're a sales guy. So you're always like trying to like sell me or something. And I'm like, or I just care about who you, and I can see something that can really help. But it's like, that's where the conflict is. Right. Yeah. So and that conflict is an internal heart conflict. But no one escapes it. I mean, countries go to war over said to be language, stories, agreements, and what is said to be. Like I say the border's here. No, I say the border's here. Okay, fine, let's fight about it. And like when there is no agreement, that's where the conflict happens. It's worth noticing. But if you're really curious on kind of writing a new story for yourself, again, we invite you to the conversation. This isn't something that is
kinder person, because I am. So it's really who support you and who see you and who.
Countries are formed inside of language and agreement. And we do that inside of our own relationship. We do that when we walk out the house, is we're stating how you want to be seen. And what you're up to is making sure people are all aligned with how you see yourself. And where the conflict occurs is when there's that discrepancy of how you're seen. And just like what I was sharing, what you were sharing is like, there's that conflict of like, I'm not a Halloween costume. I'm not a Seahawks. I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan, but
and it'll deposit doubt until you're like, no.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like, it's like, oh, you're just, you're a sales guy. So you're always like trying to like sell me or something. And I'm like, or I just care about who you, and I can see something that can really help. But it's like, that's where the conflict is. Right. Yeah. So and that conflict is
until you're like, no.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like, it's like, oh, who you. Who you, and I can see something that can really help. But it's like, that's where the conflict is. Right. Yeah. So conflict is right. The discrepancy of how you're seen. And just like what I was sharing, what you were sharing is like, there's that conflict of like, I'm not a Halloween costume. I'm not a Seahawks. I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan, but
and it'll deposit doubt until you're like, no.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like, it's like, oh, you're just, you're a sales guy. So you're always like trying to like sell me or something. And I'm like, or I just care about who you, and I can see something that can really help. But it's like, that's where the conflict is. Right. Yeah. So and that conflict is an internal heart conflict.